This is The Business Experience Show, where we connect those who want to know more about digital marketing, social media, and business strategy with entrepreneurs who are succeeding in today's marketplace. Follow our blog, join our online network, or connect with us at thebusinessexperienceshow.com. And now, your host, Lisa Caprelli.
Welcome to the Business Experience Show. We are talking today with Tom Martin. With us is my co-host, Brian Guest. Tom Martin is with Tom Martin Media. He's a public relations and communications expert. He has a wide variety of helping people get noticed. Tom, give us a little bit of your business background.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thanks, Lisa. It's great to be with you and Brian as well. I spent 20 years as a television news producer, and that meant producing stories for Diane Sawyer, Charlie Rose, the late Charles Kuralt, who was the original host of CBS Sunday Morning, who had a very big impact on me, and lots of odds and ends along the way, producing restaurant stories for the Food Network, producing business news stories for the Nightly Business Report on PBS and for CNN Financial News and so on. You know, I sort of think of myself as the bridge that works with a client or somebody with a message they really want to get out there to that larger audience, because it just feels so satisfying to be heard and, you know, to be able to share the wisdom that we have. I mean, I think that's sort of a natural human desire.
Would you say your first start was more as a writer before you became a producer?
You know, when I went to college in Washington, D.C., and all during those undergrad years, I thought I was going to become a lawyer, like so many friends of mine. And I just realized that, you know, that was not the path for me. So basically, even, you know, in my senior year of college, I was helping out at the CBS News assignment desk, helping, you know, the White House correspondent fax a script, or running over to the Senate, interview a senator or something like that. So it's really just helping out in little bits and pieces here and there. And around that time, I mean, that was the mid to late 80s, Charlie Rose was starting with a show called Night Watch, which was in the middle of the night on CBS News, and those were the days before there were, you know, 500 different channels. And so I do a lot of writing in my work, and whether it's, you know, preparing suggested questions for the hosts of shows or news anchors, or writing a script, you know, that they're going to for a video piece they're going to show on Good Morning America. So it's really, you know, storytelling, whether that means writing or filming or playing a more, you know, a supporting role for somebody who's on the air.
Right.
I love stories that have integrity, where someone is just eager to tell their story to really help people. I mean, a couple of years ago, I came up with the tagline, "Connect, communicate, change the world." And a lot of people might think, "Oh my gosh, that's so idealistic. Are you kidding me? You know, like, aren't you interested in like selling widgets or something like that?" But I love working with people who have, you know, people in education or personal transformation, you know, stuff like that. So for me, it wasn't that big a jump. And like I said, I think of myself as a storyteller. And so whether I'm on the news side, where, you know, you do check your facts and you don't, you know, give a rave review for a commercial product, because you're sort of, you know, that wouldn't be very neutral and objective. But even here on the PR side, where my job is to, you know, put the best face forward for my clients and really get them out there, it still has to be done with integrity. And I think when somebody has a really great story, you know, can hook the curiosity of viewers or listeners or readers, you know, some people in the PR field call it earned media. There are, you know, it's like has to be a story that's strong enough to deserve a few minutes of airtime, and the audience gets something out of it.
So would you say you tend to gravitate more toward human interest type of stories and clients?
I would say that I do. You know, again, when I was working for CBS Sunday Morning or Good Morning America, a show like that, I found myself asking people questions like, you know, what are you most passionate about? It's funny, in the control room, you know, I worked with Charlie Rose for about 7 years, and those of us huddled in the control room, just every interview he did, we were always sort of waiting for like the one question that Charlie would always ask. It's like, I think it was like, give me a sense of the magic of your craft. And it might sound like a little ridiculous to like put it in those terms, but I love talking to people, sort of getting the nuggets out as far as, you know, why do they do what they do? And so, like I said, I spent 3 years producing restaurant stories for the Food Network, and you might think that would get a little repetitive after a while, that every chef and every restaurant owner, has a vision and a little bit different way of doing things. I interviewed a lot of jazz musicians for CBS Sunday Morning, and they, I tried to create stories that even some of the viewers say, well, I just don't like jazz. I mean, why should I watch this story? I tried to ask questions about, how did you pursue your dream? You're you're trying to be an artist, and, what were the obstacles that you faced along the way, and so on.
Right, I agree. I mean, one of the first guests we had on the Business Experience Show was a woman that had owned and opened nail salons. And I thought there was a lot to learn from that. I mean, she had perfected her craft and had opened them up in 3 different cities. That's her chosen profession that she created for herself. And she was able to successfully repeat the process. And that, to me, that applied to many types of businesses.
Exactly. I think one of the biggest mistakes people can make is if they just say, I'm just not going to listen to that person. There's nothing I could possibly learn from that person. Or, judging a book by its cover. Certainly when I traveled America for Charles Kuralt at CBS Sunday Morning, I interviewed a number of, backwoods farmers and fishermen, and, it's like, you might think, what is this person, what could they possibly have to say that would be of value to my life? But I think everyone does have something worth listening to.
Tom, can you give an example of someone you took that was a nobody per se, and they've worked with you and they were patient in building their brand and building their story, and what PR did for them?
Sure. I mean, one example who comes to mind is my friend Ken Tenser, who is a branding and marketing consultant, and he's basically a business innovation expert. He's based in Toronto. And a couple of years ago, he and his business partner wrote a book called The 90% Solution. It was a self-published book, and it was just sort of saying you don't need to be a giant firm like Apple to make innovation sort of a steady, ongoing part of how you do business. And, no one had, aside from his clients, of course, no one had really heard of Ken. But he said, I want to become known as a voice of innovation. And again, that's a somewhat crowded field these days. There are a lot of people, putting forth advice on that topic. But again, through radio shows, through podcasts, through talking with bloggers, and noticing what's in the news, stories that would surface in the news that he could add his expertise to, we began pitching and trying to connect with different journalists in print, radio, television, and online. And as the months rolled along, his local newspaper in Toronto, the Globe and Mail, hired him, or at least gave him a spot as a regular columnist talking about innovation, because it was just sort of about making himself useful. Over 2 years, 3 years, my friend Ken developed a very busy, sort of in the news page for his website. And so when potential clients were looking at that, if they're saying, well, I'd like to work with, a branding, marketing expert, and I have 5 people in mind, and they look at 5 people's, 5 different websites. When they look at his, they say, oh my gosh, he's been interviewed, 50 times and all over the place. And that really is very persuasive. And, because of the demand, he's been able to raise his fees. He's been hired as a speaker, including, I guess, once a year in France. They have like the Global Innovation Summit. So he's been invited there a couple times. So PR has really helped, has positioned him as an expert, because again, when you're interviewed on a news program, especially featured in a magazine or newspaper, that's a stamp of credibility. Yes, you can buy an ad, but if the journalists say this person is worth listening to, that just separates you from the pack. So that's how PR can be very valuable.
And there's so many professionals that we meet each week that want to be at that level, but they just think they're going to get there from 0 to 60 immediately, and they don't understand that it's a process, and sometimes it's luck and lightning striking at the same time. I mean, it really has to be a methodical process.
It's being useful, exactly. I mean, I would look for the media outlets that are a good fit, and let them know what you have to offer. Again, sort of like I was saying earlier, if somebody wants to get some airtime and they just want to talk about their awards and how great they are, they're proud of themselves. That's good. But I think it's much better to think, how can I be of service? How can I help people? And, many times I'll tell clients, offer advice, even if your field is kind of very specialized, where most of what you do, they do need to hire you to benefit from your services. Think of a couple things that you can advise, encourage people to do in your field that helps them, so they don't necessarily have to hire you. Then they will see, oh my gosh, that person's a great expert, and then
right.
they'll have a natural desire, and the power of reciprocation kicks in also, because people are appreciative when someone helps them,
right.
and they see someone positioned as an expert. They like, well, how can I help in return? Or, well, maybe I should give them my business. So I think it works that way.
Tom, how have you seen in your career things change with technology today? Digital technology is ever prevalent, where, again, we see people who've been in business 20, 30 plus years, and they are afraid to take advantage of these digital tools, which many are free today, social media. And then again, if they do want to have a public relations firm or a publicist such as yourself, where they really need to understand and use these tools today, or I always say they're going to become a business dinosaur.
Yes, exactly. That's a great way to put it. Right after I worked for Good Morning America, I switched over into the PR field, and I worked for a mid-sized PR firm based in New York with big corporate clients. And because that company was going through some changes, they laid off several of the top executives and so on. They really wanted things to be done the way this company had been doing them for 20 years, which is writing press releases and, just sort of doing things kind of the old-fashioned way. I mean, we still use press releases and still pitch stories, but you can't do things the way they were done 10 or 20 years ago, or you are a dinosaur. And some of the people there who friends of mine and so on, they said, wow, I really missed the way things were done in the old days. Well, it serves no one to wish for the past. Social media is the way things are done now, and I think it's a great tool to connect with people with like-minded interests. I mean, you can literally connect with anyone around the world for a shared interest. And so I can see why some, old-fashioned publicists might love the idea, miss the days when there were only 5 channels on television or something. But the way I think, some people call it media fragmentation, like that's a negative thing. I think it's actually a good thing, because it means you can find a very specialized audience, as you have for your show, who, what their interests are, what their passions are, and so you can be very laser focused to give them information that will really help them and serve them. And they appreciate that, and they forge a bond with you, become a loyal community. And so I think tools like Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus really give us opportunities to develop a community. And I love how Guy Kawasaki, who often speaks about social media, has put it. He says, I like my approach is to be the public television of social media. In other words, 95% of the time I'm going to give you some tips, great articles, funny stories, et cetera, viral video clips that you're really going to enjoy. But every once in a while, I'm going to say, hey, I just wrote a book, and I think you'd really love it. And so, like I said earlier, I think the power of reciprocation is very powerful. And, and so then that audience who's been bonded to you, time after time after time on Twitter or what have you, they'll say, wow, that's, they will at least listen to you. And we live in a world of information overload. So again, just like when I'm pitching stories to the media, it's great if I can just get somebody to just give me a little bit of their time and attention, and put everything else aside. 30 seconds of your time, that's all I ask. And so social media is a great tool for that. I think some people, like Gary Vaynerchuk, another social media expert, has said, don't look at social media tools or different platforms as a distribution channel. Like, hey, I've got a new discount at my today only special sale, or blah blah blah. It's like, don't do that, because again, that's the kind of thing people will put their blinders on and filter right out, and put you on the do not on the spam list, basically. But if you really serve them and connect with them, and whenever you can, even personalize, like think of who your clients are, your top prospects are. I mean, I'm often thinking of friends of mine or even former clients. When I come across a good media lead, or a reporter's working on a certain story, like I let these people know about it. I'm not trying to win business or anything, but people appreciate it when you do them a favor, when you show that you care about them. And as some people might see social media as cold and impersonal, but really can be used in ways that are very warm and bring about that kind of connection that's very valuable.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, and because that's something in the book that we're writing, it's just something that I really want people to understand, and the person that really needs, generally speaking, from what we see, is again the person who is established in the business. They're an expert in their field, and because it's new to them versus a 24-year-old out of college where it's very natural for them. They're like, oh, that's so easy. Like they think of it, this is fun. I actually get to engage with people. I don't have to really meet them for lunch, take them to the golf, and it really can fast forward even a small business. You know,
that's exactly true. That's a very good way to put it. It's funny. I love technology and love learning new tools and whatnot. Somebody just encouraged me to download WhatsApp as a communication tool. But I remember a couple of years ago thinking about Skype. I said, "Wow, Skype sounds really complicated. I don't know. How do you download it? How do you use it?" And then so I put those thoughts out of my head and just said, "Well, I'm going to start using it." And it turned out to be the simplest thing in the world. So I think often, especially when you get past a certain age, perhaps you say, wow, this is really going to be hard to learn. It's really not. And I think if we can all have that kind of fluid mindset like you just mentioned, I think that's a great way to go, and you can really have fun with it. And it just, it's like, again, when I was speaking to a group a couple of years ago, it was just sort of my local chamber of commerce, people with local-oriented businesses. And I think this one fellow who had like a plumbing company asked a question like, I'm so busy, like we've all heard, I don't have time for social media. Do I really have time to put tweets out? Who really wants to know what I had for breakfast? It's like, hopefully people who say that, that's gone. And I said, you don't have to engage in these things, but I will tell you that there are people out there who speak that language. They love Twitter or they love Facebook. And so if you can speak to them on that platform, you're much more likely to build a bond with them. You become friends, sort of share a community, share a connection, and that is more likely to lead to business for you. So it's sort of like learning another language, literally learning another language. If you don't have to engage in that, but if you did, you open yourself up to many more possibilities.
Well, thank you, Tom Martin, for sharing with us your stories and how you help different business owners from a variety of industries. How can someone get more information from you, Tom?
Great. Well, thank you, Lisa and Brian. I would say look for me on LinkedIn and, search for Tom Martin Media. Or if you just want to email me directly, I'd be happy to hear from you, tom@tommartinmedia.com. I love the brainstorming and sort of the strategy sessions that go into a project. So I'm always happy to talk and, hear what other people are up to. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm sure you've built an incredible network of people. Obviously, it sounds like we didn't even get to go into that. You've been very modest, but your LinkedIn does show all the great notable people you've worked with in your 20-year career, right?
I love LinkedIn, and I'm also happy to make introductions. If any of you listening to this see someone in there, I have an open circle, so just contact me, and I'm happy to make introductions. But thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Tom Martin. I'm Lisa Caprelli, your host with the Business Experience Show, and thank you, Brian Guest, my co-host.